Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
Rep Sanchez, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill, for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm shocked this is the first time we've done this.
Yeah, well, we're busy people in our lives, right?
That's right. What's your general takeaway right now as you look at, it's been a couple of weeks since the presidential election, so the dust is settling. Things are starting to kind of come into a clearer picture in terms of cabinet seats and this type of business. But more than anything, just from your standpoint, what's the state of the Democratic Party right now?
Well, it's been rough the last couple weeks. Prior to the election, I understood what was on the line, and I was hoping, for a Harris-Walz win, but I also was not surprised to see a Trump, J.D. Vance win. And so, we're here now, and we've been seeing the last couple weeks how his President-elect Trump's cabinet members picks are coming about. And, well, I mean, a lot of these folks were his supporters. They've been on the campaign trail. We've seen them over the last few years as well show up in many inner circles with him and his team. And so I don't agree with probably all of this cabinet member picks, but it's his choice, his team's choice, and a percentage of these countries' voters elected President-elect Trump, and so now we have to deal with what the Democratic Party's response is going to be throughout the next 4 years. And I can say, the Democratic Party is in shambles right now, with a major divide with the centrist moderates and then the leftist progressive liberal factions to the party. And the last several years, the last decade, I would say, have led up to what we're dealing with now and the overall results since 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's definitely been a burning. It's like a comet that's getting closer and closer and closer, and we've seen it coming for decades. The corporatization of the Democratic Party, which has, while there are substantial differences between Democrats and Republicans, there's no doubt about it, especially what the MAGA movement has embraced. Both parties have become largely the business party, and they're answering to primarily corporate interests.
Right.
Average everyday Americans, whether or not they believe or whether or not the Trump message is truthful in its, sort of worker-oriented, everyday person-oriented approach. It likely isn't, but it certainly resonated a lot more. And by the way, it's not just nationally; it's here in Rhode Island. We saw substantial gains.
Yeah. No, I mean the party has lost its way. Democrats aren't what Democrats used to be now. A couple decades ago, 30, 40 years ago. I would say both parties have always been military-industrial complex driven, for a long time. But it seems like the Democratic Party needs to have this major corporate militarism aspect to the party. And, even if we're changing with like DEI, diversity and equity, inclusion, and having different individuals join, for example, this past administration, the Biden administration, folks with different ethnicities, backgrounds, genders, folks who identify as queer, but still parroted the same corporate, same militarism, talking points, viewpoints that the elites represent in this country. It makes it no difference, Right. There's a meme out there where you see two airplanes dropping bombs on whatever it's a city, right? It pictures our flag on both planes, and on one picture of the plane, you see just the Republican sign like a conservative letterhead that says conservatives, Republicans, right? And then underneath you see the Democratic Party title, but then you see the plane also having like the transgender flag. You see the Black Lives Matter flag. You see all this like diversity, DI stuff, cultural stuff on the flag. But they're both dropping bombs on the city. So that's where you see a clear indication on how they both parties resemble what they stand for, and it's not serving the interests of the working class of this country. It's not serving the interests of teachers, the firefighters, the construction workers, the unions. It's not what folks expect it to be.
Right. Mm-hmm. And yet you have been outspoken about this. You've been one of the more outspoken sitting state representatives, or really one of the more outspoken elected officials here in Rhode Island. Yeah. And, I only can see what happens on social media and a little bit of what happens in the media proper and the General Assembly on the floor and things like that. But, part of the strategy is to make someone like you feel like, well, he's some kind of outside of, he's out of his mind. He's got this extremist agenda and he has no idea how the real world works. Shut up and listen to what we have to say because we know better. But what you're saying is, in fact, really just what I think most people are thinking, and some people are saying, but most people are thinking, maybe not directly, but in terms of if you ask the average everyday person what they need, sure, they might say, I don't know, the border or something. They might fall into the news-driven trappings, but for the most part, people realize that wealth inequality and corporatization of society has gotten to a point where we're almost going to be an oligarchy, certainly in our lifetimes, if we continue on this track. Some have argued we're already there.
Yep, I agree. It's been frustration, Bill, over the last decade being built. Not just me, but millions of Americans who supported the Bernie Sanders campaign back in 2015-16. Voters, residents of this country who we saw an alternative to what the Hillary Clinton campaign represented, the Joe Biden campaign represented, that wing, the Obamas, the Clintons, the whatever, Obama's, Biden's, Clintons, that faction of the party that has held the power for the last decade for the Democratic Party. And so we saw an alternative, but instead of embracing the Sanders progressive movement, the party turned its back on that faction of the party, and there was hundreds and millions of voters who felt betrayed, working class people who felt betrayed. And so now we're dealing with the consequences here for the last we're dealing with the consequences now from this last presidential election, but I know for a fact that the last decade has had a major contributing force to the decision making that we're dealing with now. And here at the local level, there's maybe just a few of us who are being outspoken and saying that we need to make drastic changes within local leadership of the party, and folks who might think that I'm crazy or we're crazy, those of us who are speaking out on and blaming, the corporate establishment of the party. And so, but I mean, how can we sound crazy when we have the results before us? People who are, we see how the country's the Rhode Island state's demographics leaned an increased percentage towards Trump. That support for Trump grew drastically in a lot of counties across the states. And for a lot of reasons who I've been speaking to, residents, constituents, a lot of people were telling me, the Democratic Party just doesn't care about affordable housing. The Democratic Party doesn't just care about raising wages or raising salaries. Those economic issues. Sure, yes, there's some social issues. Some people have asked or told me, folks who changed voter registration or folks who voted for Trump told me a couple of things about the cultural war, right? About transgender rights, queer rights, same-sex marriage, abortion and stuff. Some of the folks that changed their mind, they voted, but most people voted for Trump because of the economic issues, not because of the social issues.
Which was the complete wrong message from the Democratic machine this year, from Jump Street, particularly once Harris was elevated and once the social media campaign around her began and once sort of the branding started. It was basically, hey, we're not Trump. We got to save democracy. And while she did lay out, a lot of people say, oh, she had no policies. She had policies. The problem was they didn't translate to Joe and Mary public. And the reality is, when we look right now at Woonsocket, exactly what you said. Woonsocket went Trump. This is a town that the globalization and in the post-industrial revolution era has bypassed without significant appropriate development. You've got a city council and a previous mayor that's had all kinds of shenanigans, and yet people have said, let's vote for the billionaire, or probably the multimillionaire perceived as a billionaire, who is denigrating immigrants, a city built by immigrants, granted for the most part French Canadian, but now in a city of immigrants. What city isn't a city of immigrants? The whole U.S. is a country of immigrants. But my point is that it's a place that it is not characteristic of its previous electoral performance for it to go right. Now it's gone Trump. That should be the wake-up call to the Democratic Party, whether it's, it could be personnel shifts, but more than anything, it's just platform shifts and outreach strategy.
Yeah. Places like Woonsocket, I saw West Warwick too, Richmond, some other counties were flipped, and then we see over in Massachusetts too, Fall River. Those counties came as a surprise. But then again, Bill, I had a bit in before me that there was a part of me that believed that Trump was going to win.
Sure.
And I know that a lot of working class people, working poor people, were leaning towards voting for Trump because of the economic aspect. And, immigration issues have always been a talking point for the Republicans, right? Illegal immigration, we have to do deportations, the Trump campaign countered, heavily on the mass deportation operation of this country. And, the media, the media has a lot to do with it as well. Yeah. And that's what, that's why it's important to have an unbiased viewpoint of the media, whether you support the left or the right. It's an important tool out there that serves the interests of the people, and people take a different perspective on how they want to intake the information. Yeah. And so Woonsocket is I would say it's a diverse city in a way, for sure. It has its pockets of diversity, but there's also there's a lot of folks there who don't identify as either black or brown or any other minority or whatever, right? And so I think it's also achievable to change the city voting registration again. We can change it back to a Democratic ticket if we have the right candidates in the next 4 years as well.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how the national party reshapes itself. I've heard from people that are your colleagues that have told me that either they themselves or they are hearing that the direction that the party needs to take here in Rhode Island, whether they themselves believe it or they're just echoing what they've heard, is to go towards the center, move right. And this is a Democratic Party in Rhode Island that you want to talk about a wide tent. I mean, you've got people who are open Trump supporters in this party.
Right.
If you want to use the left-right spectrum, that axis, fine. You can say all the way out to the
Right.
Elected members of the DSA. So this is as wide of a tent as you can get. It seems like moving to the right, it depends on what that means. Does that mean moving to the right away from so-called social flashpoint issues, or does that mean moving to the right in terms of fiscal conservative ideas? I mean, that's a vague statement, but what's your take right now when you hear people in the party say, hey, we got to move to the right to win back the election, the electorate?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that that there's nothing to go back to towards the right, I will say this. I do believe the party will use the excuse of there being a deficit this year, to cover. Sure. We have a budget deficit to cover this year, and I know the governorship's team, the Senate, the House, where I legislate, and we have a lot of work to do to cover. We're not going to have those federal dollars,
the ARPA dollars,
exactly, that we had the last few years, and so we're going to be tight on money.
Yep.
There's going to be cuts and so on. So these austerity measures are going to be used as a cover up. I'm just thinking here by our leadership within the Senate, House, governorship people, to say, oh, we can't spend on this as we did the last few years. Oh, we're going to have to make cuts to this. Oh, we're going to have to allocate funding from, instead of for Medicaid, Medicaid stuff, Medicare funding instead for economic development. I think because we've been seeing these issues with like Hasbro, with CVS, Citizens Bank, all these other major employers who are coming to the state and saying, oh, hey, listen, we need tax cuts. We need to relook at our tax bracket. We need to receive these tax stabilization agreements. And so our state is like, oh shit, like we need to look at economic development. Yeah. And so I think as the party is saying we need to move back to the right, in the state General Assembly, we're going to be making decisions, fiscally conservative decisions, that is going to not take into consideration increasing a minimum wage.
Right.
Taking into consideration, pushing for like a different cultural remembrance day or something. I don't think. I think the cover up of economic development and fiscally conservative decision making is going to be a cover up for like saying, oh, well, to hell with the progressive wing of the party for the next couple of years. Let's focus on economic development.
So it's going to leave the progressive wing, or it's going to leave people who want to think about things through what they or anybody in sort of that left-right dynamic would call a progressive lens. I just think it's a real world lens. I think we've gotten to a point. I've never campaigned for, I was never like a Bernie guy from the standpoint of like, oh yeah, like I own a t-shirt or something like that.
Right.
It just seems like it makes so much more sense to look at the world through that lens. It's not even really left, right. And it's become so difficult to even have these conversations with a lot of people because they automatically say, well, you just want free things, or you want to crush capitalism, whatever it is. Like, you can't have the practical on the ground conversations about basic things like minimum wage,
right,
like healthcare. Like, how in the world do we have a society where we don't have healthcare for all of, and people say, well, we do. Yeah, good healthcare, right, that is affordable, that you don't go into debt for, that you have access to, that promotes an ecosystem of physicians and dentists and so on and so forth that want to be here, want to work here. We have all of these obvious things in front of us, and yet that messaging gets tied in with, well, if you think that, then why don't you just leave the country and go back, go to some communist country, which we've never even had an effective communist regime in the world. But it's just the stupidification of this discussion is infuriating, and I don't know how we get out of that jam.
Yeah, I mean, it's these are the consequences of the party being led by neoliberals, by fiscally conservative Democrats, and I would say even to some extent conservative Democrats who, we've seen over the last couple decades control the General Assembly here at the local level, and then also at the national level as well. I don't think things like affordable health care, universal health care, or universal income, or an $18-19 minimum wage, or free tuition for all public universities. Those aren't fantasy land like policies. Those are real policies that we see implemented in other countries as well, and not like socialist communist countries in like across the world, but like in nations in Europe, who a lot of these nations have great healthcare coverage, good schools, free tuition schools. In Mexico, we're seeing now different programs get into place with this new government as well. Things like giving out pensions, for elderly individuals who are having an increase in their pensions. Yep. For individuals who weren't receiving as much money, and in other countries across Latin America as well. Those policies about living wages, higher wages, or good universal education or healthcare, they shouldn't be like labeled as like this extremist policies. Those are policies that serve the working class of our communities and of our country.
Bartholomew Town.
Birds are disappearing from our landscape at a rapid pace. Over 1/3 of those breeding on Audubon Society of Rhode Island's wildlife refuges are in decline. Climate change has taken a toll on their migration, nesting, and food sources. While science is highlighting the problem, Audubon is working on real solutions with a plan to rapidly reduce their carbon emissions. The organization will be free of fossil fuels by 2030, with renewable energy powering Audubon's buildings, equipment, and vehicles. To shape our future, all of us must act. Learn more about Repowering Audubon, their avian research, and how you can join their fight for climate resiliency. Visit asri.org/repower. Newport Film screens the latest, critically acclaimed documentary films year-round across Rhode Island. Like a film festival, Newport Film often gets early access to films before they're available online or in the theaters. Stay up to date on their latest screening events at newportfilm.com or on Instagram @NewportFilm. Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech, and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communication, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. No doubt about it. All right, last seconds here. Sure. Your take on the Washington Bridge right now. We don't really know exactly what this thing is going to look like. I mean, just from your seat on a General Assembly context, you know, a lot of people say, well, how is Peter Alviti still there? Well, if you fire him, all of a sudden you've got a scenario where the state is kind of implicating itself as we pursue litigation against 13 contractors. At the same time, you look at this guy and the way that he's come out. You know, I was thinking about it last night. It's like one of, you know, imagine if you had a football team and the offensive line coach came out and did a press conference on his own, and it contradicted what the head coach was going to say. He's backed off of it a little bit, but for a while he was completely misleading the public. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's from the very beginning, since early from December, when we saw the announcement of the closure of the bridge, we saw how irresponsible the director had been with like the interviews that he was taking. I remember there was an interview, I think like the second week after that bridge was announced to be closed, where he was like running away from like the reporters or something, or walking away. And so, I mean, everything from him discussing like the engineer who blew the whistle,
the young engineer. It's going to be it needs to be like a cartoon, like a coloring book, you know, someday.
Exactly.
Peter Alviti and the young engineer.
Engineer to they're not being contractors, or the bids not being out there, to the timeline of the bridge being built and stuff. You know, I mean, I also think, you know, there also has a lot to do with like the relationships amongst you know, like the governor and the director and the unions, how they're all tied into place, Senate president, all, you know, all of that. They're all tied. They all have relationships with each other. And so I mean, it's for them, for the executive branch of government, if they were to fire the director, they would be implicating that they're at fault. But they're really trying to build a case as to why the state's not at fault, and it's the fault of the engineering companies or previous companies, contractors who didn't do their job correctly, or blame it on the other administration, the previous administration. But I mean, I think it's important for folks to understand and know that leadership at an agency or a department has a lot to do with how the decisions are played out. And I've spoken to plenty of RIDOT employees and workers who tell me that they don't feel, who are scared or afraid to speak out against their bosses. The leadership, a lot of them complain about leadership at RIDOT, and they know that they're not competent to be leading the leadership. You know, there's a lot of individuals there that shouldn't be at RIDOT making these decisions, and they're only there because of, you know, they know a guy. You know, but
it's going to be interesting to see if Peter Alviti, I think there's a chance he'll retire at some point, you know, and just sort of maybe he didn't want to, but guess what, director, it's a good time. We'll have we'll have a party for you at Cello's or something like that. We'll have a cake with a road sign on it, and then ride off into the sunset. Meanwhile, the last year has been a textbook study in. I think he's undermined the governor. I think he's undermined the House and Senate, and I think he's undermined the people. Whatever it comes of the investigations from the U.S. attorney, just or the notion of deflection of responsibility and mixed communication. From my seat in the media, I mean, it's been ridiculous. They come up with dates certain. Well, we're going to do them. And they're telling you it's not going to take that long to get over the bridge. And it's just like, what are you doing? Why not own it? Why not say, hey, look, I'm in charge of RIDOT. Something happened here under my watch. My legacy is tied to this. And whether you guys trust me or not, I'm going to run through a brick wall to make sure that this is resolved, and whoever's responsible, including myself, are dealt with accordingly. And instead, it's been, like I said, it really feels like, you know, either a children's book or there should be like a Disney movie, you know, Peter and the Bridge or something. It's such a joke, and the guy runs away from reporters. He's an embarrassment. You know, the next governorship race is going to be determined by what the bridge outcome is. I would say for sure. A lot of residents, the majority of
all of our constituency community bases here in the state, all Rhode Islanders want to see that bridge fixed as soon as possible, and especially for the folks who cross that bridge every single day to get to work, to school, get to do activities every single day, and I know that the voters of the state are going to vote for a governor in the next election, the next 2 years. And that's going to determine who wins this race. But yeah, I mean, there hasn't been enough transparency, enough communication with RIDOTs towards the House of Representatives, towards the Senate, towards other municipal government factions of our state. There hasn't been that, hey, listen, like, we're working on it. This is what's happening this week. If we want to do like a conference call in 2 weeks, I'll let you guys know what are the updates now with this part of the bridge. But instead, we've had RIDOT communication send out an email like once a week, but like there's nothing included about the bridge, barely anything.
Right.
So.
Oh, by the way, exit 37 is going to have repair. Oh, by the way, there's there's a minor issue on 195.
Exactly. We're going to close this highway down for a week too.
Yeah, that's been interesting. The impact on that's another discussion for another time. The inequity of road repairs, traffic signals, so on and so forth, and our neighborhoods here. It's wild, and people wonder, well, how come we need bike lanes? Try riding a bike down Elmwood Avenue and see how that goes.
Exactly.
Rep Sanchez, thanks so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
I got a great education at the University of Rhode Island. It's something that I use every day in all of my work. And now the University of Rhode Island, if you haven't heard, they're offering a wide array of programs online. That's right, URI Online. Check it out at uri.edu/online or give them a call, 401-874-5280. I can't thank the University of Rhode Island enough for the outstanding education that they provided me. They're one of the best universities in the Northeast, public or otherwise. Give them a call, 401-874-5280. That's 401-874-5280, and learn about the University of Rhode Island online. You want to talk about longevity? Take a look at Navigant Credit Union. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. That's right. Today, Navigant's a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.